So this is from the New York Times, and just so you know, a lot of this entire story takes place in the Middle East, so my apologies if I pronounce like every name here wrong. Why Saad Hariri had that strange sojourn in Saudi Arabia. In case you don't know, Saad is the Prime Minister of Lebanon, which is another country in the Middle East. As I mentioned, this is from the New York Times. This article's kind of long, so I'm not going to be reading all of it. I'll be reading as much of it as you guys need to know, of course. Beirut, Lebanon. Lebanon's Prime Minister Saad Hariri was summoned at 8:30 a.m. to the Saudi royal office, unseemingly early by the kingdom's standards, on the second day of a visit that was already far from what he expected. Mr. Hariri, long an ally of the Saudis, dressed that morning in jeans and a t-shirt, thinking he was going camping in the desert with the crown prince, Muhammad bin Salman, I'm still not entirely sure to pronounce that. But instead, he was stripped of his cell phone, separated from all but one of his usual cluster of bodyguards, and shoved and insulated by Saudi security officers. Then came in the unlimited indignity. He was handed a pre-written resignation speech and forced to read it on Saudi television. So essentially, Saudi Arabia kidnapped the Prime Minister of Lebanon. Now, could you imagine for a second it was the other way around? When we're one of the strongest allies of Saudi Arabia, the U.S. is. Could you imagine if it was the Prime Minister of Lebanon kidnapping the Prince of Saudi Arabia? The outrage from the mainstream media would be gigantic. You know, CNN would be covering this day in, day out. MSNBC, Fox News, all of them. They'd be sitting there going, wait, what? Why are they doing that? And I guarantee you we'd even be seriously talking about invading Lebanon. Actually, I think we may already be doing drone strikes in Lebanon. I could be wrong about that. This, it seemed, was the real reason he had been bedknocked to the Saudi capital, Riyadh, a day earlier, to resign under pressure and publicly blame Iran, as if he were an employee and not a sovereign leader. I love that so much. Just, oh, we're going to make him resign, and then we're going to blame it on Iran. My God, Saudi Arabia. I've declared it the most evil country in all the world several times. Things like this are why. They're essentially a jihadist version of North Korea, and their foreign policy is beyond draconian. Before going on TV, he was not even allowed to go to his house he owns there. He had to ask for guards to bring him a suit. As bizarre as the episode was, it was just one chapter in the story of Prince Muhammad, the ambitious young heir, determined to shake up the power structure not just of his own country, but of the entire regime. At home, he had jailed hundreds of his fellow princes and businessmen in what he cast an anti-corruption drive. Abroad, he waged war in Yemen and confronted Qatar. I'm still not entirely. I should know how to pronounce that one. My God. Yeah, in case you haven't made it clear yet, the Prince of Saudi Arabia is not someone who I very much like. I'm just going to say what he is. He's essentially a dictator. You know, he's an absolute monarch. And when you have an absolute monarchy, no constitutional monarchy, I mean, unless you count the Quran as a constitution, but that's extremely stretching it. Oh, God. The day Mr. Harry was reported to Rebada, he was just a pawn in the Crown Prince overall battle to rein in the regional ambitions of Saudi Arabia's longtime rival, Iran, because he knew that Iran was never going to go to Saudi Arabia. This is the backstory of Mr. Harry's long, strange sojourn in Saudi Arabia last month, as revealed in behind-the-scenes accounts from a dozen Western, Lebanese, and regional officials and associates of Mr. Harry. Okay, so that's just the setup for the story. And you know what? Here's what that led to. I'm just reading the entire article at this point. After delivering his speech, as his bewildered age tried in vain to reach him from Bertie, Mr. Harry did, indeed, eventually spend the evening in the desert with the Crown Prince, one senior Lebanese official says. It was a surreal counterpoint to a series of Middle East events unfolding that day and into the night that set the entire Middle East on edge. A missile fired at Rebadai, the hundreds of Saudi princes and businessmen arrested, and Lebanon left stunned and confused. Prince Muhammad had already launched a war in neighboring Yemen against Iran-alleged rebels and gotten bogged down. He had blockaded Qatar, we've covered that tons of times on the show, only to push the Gulf country closer to Iran. Now he was looking to take out the prime minister of another country, one who was deemed not sufficiently obedient to his Saudi patrons. That's how much power Saudi Arabia has in the Middle East. They don't like you, they can just kidnap you and take you out and make you resign just like that. You can kind of snap. Okay. The prince intended to send a message. It was time to stop the Iran's Lebanese ally, Hezbollah, the powerful Shiite organization that is Lebanon's most influential political actor, from growing still stronger. The Prime Minister month-long saga was another example of a brash new leader trying to change the way Saudi Arabia has worked for years, but finding the actions often results in unintended consequences, especially in such a complicated region. Now, Mr. Harry remains in office with new popularity, and Hezbollah is stronger than before. Okay. So, what's the moral here? The moral here is, essentially, because here's what annoys me. What annoys me is not the fact that Saudi Arabia didn't get away with this. I'm happy with that. What annoys me is the fact that they are given such power by the United States that they thought they could to begin with. I guarantee you, if we had not backed them for as long as we had, they would have never even thought about doing this. And because you ever see Iran doing this? You ever see any countries we don't back doing this? No, you don't. This is an example of what U.S. policies that support Saudi Arabia lead to. The country grows bigger, and they're a Wahhabi state. So, of course, in response, they're going to use that power. They're a dictatorship. I think they're a dictatorship. They're an absolute monarchy, not a dictatorship. And because of that, things like this happen. But anyway, that's it. I'm Ephrom, and good night.